Welcome to the Visually Hidden Selects podcast, where we discuss an independent approach to the art of cinema and explore the subtext of various featured films. My name is Peter O'Brien, and I am an independent filmmaker, author, and musician.
My name is David Bendler. I'm a film and stage actor and a pop culture enthusiast.
I'm Anne Milleville, a French screenwriter and producer.
This week's VHS selection was Goodfellas from 1990, directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Lorraine Bracco. So if you have not seen Goodfellas, be sure to head over to the Visually Hidden YouTube channel and subscribe, check out the episode, and then come on back to the podcast. We will be discussing it at length, in depth, and spoiler-filled. So here we go. Goodfellas, 1990. I remember when this movie came out, I was probably about 6.5 years old. And I remember seeing the poster and the ads on television, but of course I wasn't going to the movie theater to see it at that time. But when it came on HBO the following summer, oh, you betcha, it was game on. I remember the first time I saw this movie because it was like a brand new movie. And I was like, oh, wow, this is that movie. It's the guy from Midnight Run. I love that movie. It's great. Of course, Joe Pesci, it wasn't long before he became a household name with Home Alone, and everybody knew him throughout the 90s if they didn't know him before. But of course, I also knew him from Easy Money. We had that on video, so I knew who Joe Pesci was. I knew who Robert De Niro was. And so for me, it was kind of exciting to see this movie because my parents were in the other room and I was in the living room by myself with the TV, so there was nobody to tell me what. And even if they did know I was watching it, I don't think they would have cared too much because I wasn't, smoking cigarettes or eating bleach or sniffing glue or anything. So it was kind of okay, fun. But that was the first time I saw it. And then from there, there's just something about this movie for me that makes it endlessly rewatchable. I could just throw it on pretty much any day and get pulled into it because I think the story is just told really, really well. And that's the part of the thing that keeps me coming back. It's just something that's always present and always relevant in terms of film enthusiasm. I think, a lot of people, especially film people, whether you make films or just love films, you tend to gravitate towards this one. Anne has never seen this film before, and I know Steve has seen it. He grew up with it. We both come from New York. It's kind of a rite of passage for us. But Anne, what did you think of Goodfellas when it came knocking on your door for this podcast?
So yeah, I didn't know this movie before. I mean, I knew the title, of course, and I knew that Robert De Niro was in there. And actually, I thought he was the main character of it. So, I didn't know much about it before. But I was very enthusiastic to watch it for the first time because I know Martin Scorsese is it's a huge director, right? And I heard it's kind of his masterpiece. So I had huge expectations on this movie. What can I say? It's really a gangster movie. Like these days, I'm surprised about gangster movies because I thought that I didn't like them. And thanks to you, I discovered The Long Good Friday recently through this podcast, and it was a very, very good surprise. And once again, it's a very interesting movie to watch. Definitely something that a cinema lover should see at least once in his life because you have many things to learn from it. I would say that way. A very good first impression. It's the kind of movie that you need to rewatch, revisit, and maybe that's what I'm gonna do because definitely you can't get everything with just one watch.
All right, we got another convert. Let's go. Steve, what you got for me?
Oh, man. I mean, I vaguely remember seeing the advertisements and the trailers for this when I was a kid. I don't recall the first time I sat down to watch it, but I feel like it's always been a part of my life. Kind of like your parents, you know what I mean? Like it's always there. This is a movie that I just love. It's so easy to watch. Let me tell you, when I was first dating my wife, I said, "You ever see Goodfellas?" She said, "No." We sat down, and that's what we did that afternoon in my apartment. We watched Goodfellas. I was like, that had to be rectified immediately, or the relationship couldn't continue. So yeah, this one for me is one of my all-time favorites.
It really is a lot of fun to just watch.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so well put together. And I mentioned this in the VHS video, but the editing of this film is on a different level. Mm-hmm. And the technique behind it, Martin Scorsese's direction and the approach to telling the story through montage is just really, really effective and really, really fantastic. And that was something I didn't really realize until I started making films, was the power of
Mhm.
montage and just the way you can actually cover a lot of ground just through images, because again, it is a visual medium. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and if you get that frame right and everything is happening correctly in it, that's all you need. You don't need big scenes full of pages and pages of dialogue. You can just set up your shot, and the narration of course helps, but sometimes just the music helps tell the story in this movie,
Mhm.
which is really fantastic. I think there's something to be said about the presentation of the lifestyle in this film. It's a very disposable nature that these characters adopt. Like, people come and people go, not always voluntarily,
Mhm.
and they just burn through money, and if they want something they just take it. So there's really there's loyalty insofar as like the individual is concerned, but there's really no loyalty because you say the wrong thing, you get out of line, you get whacked, and that's it.
Yeah.
So 25 years of friendship really doesn't mean a whole lot when somebody else's neck is on the
Mhm.
line. There's the scene earlier in the film after Henry and Karen get married, and you just see his closet. It's like a rainbow of
Mhm.
suits, right? And then that all goes away when he goes to jail, and Karen's living in the apartment with the girls in the bunk beds. It's like, go find a house right now, we're getting out of here. And it's right back to that
Mhm.
luxurious lifestyle. So I think that's just a really fascinating thing that this film really displays, more so than like Scarface,
Mhm.
which is contingent on building up the cocaine empire, is really the big factor in it. And here it's a little bit more reeled into the suburbs. He doesn't live in a mansion surrounded by armed guards. Henry Hill lives just in a suburb in New Jersey or Long Island or Queens. It's just kind of fascinating.
I mean, one of my uncles lives in Queens, and back in the day when he'd hang out with his friends, one of his friends was Jimmy Conway Jr., and they would still reap the benefits of, oh, Mr. Conway, come right in. And then, even though his father was in prison at that point, the name still carried the weight, like Henry says in the beginning of the film. It was out of respect. He didn't have to wait in line for fresh bread anymore and all this other stuff, and that still carries on.
I wanted to say something about the reality. That's something bugged me is the fact that we don't really talk about the police except at the end. But I don't know, these guys do crazy stuff, people die, and the police doesn't seem to be interested in those guys. And I mean, before the end of it. So I was surprised about that from the beginning. I mean, they got arrested, some of them, but in their everyday life, many scenes, I was like, okay, there is no police around, so I was surprised by that.
They establish it kind of in the beginning when Jimmy is after he hijacks the truck of cigarettes and he's handing them out to the neighborhood people, and he gives the police officers a couple of cartons with money in it. He's buying off the police is what he's
Mhm.
doing.
Mm.
And that theme of corruption and protection is throughout the entire film. And they do show up. Like, there's the scene after Henry and Karen are married, and they show up with the search warrant, and they just kind of knock things around, but really,
Mm.
she says that really they're just looking for a handout. It comes back around a number of times, even when they're in prison and they have their own little
Yeah.
suite in the jail. Like, they're not in with the other convicts in cells. They have their own little like dormitory
Mm.
where they're getting lobster and
That's
making
crazy.
dinner
Yeah.
and drinking wine and everything. That's the power that they have in the
Henry's
community.
paying
That's
off the
crazy when
So,
you.
and
guard
I
to let
feel,
stuff into the prison.
yeah, so the police are there. It's just, it's kind of not showing them in the greatest of light, and
Mm.
it's just presenting the reality of the corruption.
Mm.
And even at the end, he says, we were movie stars with muscle. We had everything, paid off judges, paid off lawyers, paid off cops.
Mm.
Yeah, you wonder, like, where the fuck are the police? These people are
Mhm.
shooting guns and, murdering each other and this and that, and like digging ditches and what's going on here? And really, yeah, they're protected, they're entitled. And that's part of the mentality and the lifestyle that I think the film really excels at presenting.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest criticisms that this movie has always gotten is that it romanticizes the mafia. And while I'm not going to lie and say that it doesn't, I think those people who make that criticism kind of missed the point of the film, because at the end, they all pay a price for what they've done. And I think even as a kid, he
Yeah.
saw that, he admired that, he wanted to be that, he was caught up in the romanticism of it. it's like two movies. The first movie is an old style romanticized mob movie, and then the second part of the movie is a drug movie. When the piper comes around to collect, it's like that's when the tone changes. The romanticism is now faded. His relationships at every turn are falling apart, and the empire is crumbling. When I hear that blanket simplified criticism of the movie, it kind of annoys me because like you're missing the point. Henry was caught up in the
Yeah.
romanticism, and then look how he ends up.
Yeah, well, and that just shows the evolution of society. Nobody sitting behind a desk in a mansion decided like, you know what? I'm just gonna make drugs and give them to people. Like people wanted
Yeah.
drugs, and the mob saw an opportunity to provide it. And even in The Godfather, they touch upon this, escalation. It used to just be,
Mhm.
racketeering and numbers and gambling, and then it became hijacking, and then it became this and this and this. And in The Godfather, it's going towards, well, there's this product now that people seem to enjoy, and we can get, a foothold in this industry. And Vito Corleone doesn't want to participate in that stuff.
It's business opportunities.
Business opportunity. It's all
Yeah.
business. That's
Yeah.
it. It's just business. And so in this film, they kind of, again, they show a practical light on it where like Henry gets involved out of necessity, but then it kind of gets its hooks into him, as it does with most people who become involved in drugs, whether it's, on the giving or receiving end of it. It's a cautionary tale.
Yeah, he gets addicted twofold. It's to the actual drugs themselves and to the money that they bring. And then you also the narration paired with the brilliant musical choices. These old nostalgic 50s and 60s pop songs. It just has a very welcoming feel.
And because you're getting his direct feed of the events, you're seeing it through his lens. And it's very, very different than if like Serpico were telling you this story. And there's like 43 songs in this movie. It's basically like wall to wall music. There is no score. It just the music helps tell the story through those different time periods. And Martin Scorsese, he picked every
Mhm.
song for every scene and sequence because he knew what he wanted to complement the story that he was telling, and not just in terms of what was happening, but what the characters were experiencing from their points of view. And when it gets to the end, that sequence in 1980, that one day when it all falls apart,
Yeah.
the music there is just fantastic, and it starts with that Henry Nielsen song "Jump in the Fire," and that's where he's going, man. He's going up in flames at that point. So it's just brilliant, like subtle touches.
I once attended a screening of Raging Bull, and Thelma Schoonmaker, his editor, did a live Q&A after.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
the sound of envy. Oh.
And she's such a sweetheart, but she sat up on stage and she was talking about the musical choices, obviously for Raging Bull, because it was about Raging Bull. But she said that Martin Scorsese will, if he finds a piece of music that he likes, he'll hold on to it, sometimes for years, until he finds the right moment to use it in his film, and then he pulls the trigger. And her editing is just top notch. I mean, it's like a second director in there. I mean, she's really so good at what she does. And I mean, yeah, like you had said in the video, it feels like the whole movie is like a giant montage, and not in a bad way. But I mean, I think
No.
between that and the editing and the tight storytelling, the runtime on this could have been awful, but it just flies by. It's so smooth.
Dude, the editing in this film, it really is masterful. I cannot stress that enough. Thelma Schoonmaker is the queen of cutting. She really, really is. And this is like the prime example of it. In anybody else's hands, any other filmmaker, any other editor, this could have been a 3.5 hour movie. It could have been a snooze fest. It could have been exciting, maybe, we won't know, but it could have very easily been out of control. And here it's reeled in super tight. It really is like next level filmmaking that I really wish we could like get back
Oh, me
to.
too.
Yeah, I would say that it was a bit long for me, to be frank with you. I don't really like long movies, especially the last act, I think is a bit too long for me. I wanted to know the end, I was like, okay, so what's gonna happen? What the point of it? The first half of it was was super great because of the technicity. You have many things to watch, to understand, so you completely into the intensity, and especially the fact that you start with the scene with Billy's dead, almost dead body, because he's not totally dead. The movie starts with that, and then you come back from his Henry's childhood. So during all that time, you're like, okay, so why did I start with the car scene with Jimmy and Henry? You want to know what was the point to start with that? So you're intrigued, and you right away in the atmosphere of the mafia. So I love that part. But I would say that when they talk about the 80s, his drug addiction, yeah, it was a bit too long for me, that part.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at is once Joe Pesci is out of the equation, it really starts to struggle. I think he's the gas in the tank. He's the foot on the pedal for most of this movie.
Probably.
And when he's removed, I think it starts to sputter a little bit. I don't exactly agree, but I'll take that interpretation. The ending of this movie when My Way kicks in by Sid Vicious. What a perfect piece of punctuation to a movie. I mean, really, like, I want that played at my funeral, man. That was like, wow,
Yeah.
because it has that punk edge with,
The attitude.
the lack of authority, and the attitude, but then it also has like the class of like the Frank Sinatra, like nostalgic tie to the words in the original presentation, but it's just this like warped, bastardized interpretation, which is really what the film is for the reality of most people. It's like, holy shit, they're fucking doing that? That's fucking insane.
Yeah.
And I know that Scorsese wanted to have the Sinatra and they couldn't get the rights, but I feel like the Sid Vicious punk rock version is really just the right note to go out on.
Absolutely.
It continues the energy into the credits.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more.
And now a word from our sponsor.
This podcast is brought to you by Visually Hidden Selects. If you're looking for a spoiler-free recommendation of a classic film with professional analysis and insight, check out Visually Hidden Selects, exclusively on the Visually Hidden YouTube channel.
There's so many funny moments in Goodfellas. I think that always kind of gets overlooked by the subject matter. Man, there's some scenes where I just laugh. I just find it. I mean, I have a dark, warped sense of humor anyhow. So some of this shit I just find funny, on my own.
Yeah, just little exchanges that maybe aren't actually funny, but like the interpretation or the presentation is funny. Like a lot of the stuff with Maury.
Oh my
and
God.
Maury's like his wig commercial.
Oh yeah. Oh.
That itself just dropped in the middle of the movie. It's like, what the fuck is this? And it's like, and then as you get to know the character and on a rewatch, it's like, oh yeah, here's that bozo. Oh, that's hilarious. Like I think a big part of the humor comes from the rewatch.
Well, that's one of the funniest parts of the movie is like, that commercial is like, Maury's wigs don't come off in a storm. He can jump
even underwater.
He can jump in the pool. And then Jimmy chokes him with the fucking phone wire and it flops off. That's like,
yeah. And Henry's laughing at him.
Henry's laughing.
And that's what I'm saying about Henry. It's like, we're getting the story through him. So when he's laughing, we're laughing.
What makes it brilliant though is Henry's laughing his ass off. And De Niro couldn't be more serious if he tried.
It's the idea of like, laughter being contagious. You go watch a movie. I think we talked about this around the holidays. Like I saw Elf in the theater and it was hilarious. I watched Elf by myself and I just wanted to strangle Will Ferrell. But like because Joe Pesci's laughing, because Ray Liotta's laughing, because they're all laughing, it's contagious. And it's like, oh yeah, that's great. There's a lot of scenes like that. And even with the editing, when they go down to Florida and they rough up the guy and they're going to feed him to the lions. And then Henry's like, they must really feed each other to the lions down here because he coughed it right up.
Yeah.
Like just that delivery and that exchange is just funny when you hear it,
Yeah. Let's talk about performances for a sec. Joe Pesci, man. I mean, this guy in the same calendar year had Home Alone come out and he had Goodfellas come out. I mean, that's range.
Joe Pesci, I think, is really, yes, Robert De Niro is a great actor, but I personally feel like I haven't really seen him act in a long time. Like I feel like he just kind of got to a level and then he just became Robert De Niro. But Joe Pesci in this film, I mean, he had been working for a number of years, but really this was kind of like his like breakout performance. And then he won the Oscar for it, is like very well deserved.
Yeah.
And when you look at his other body work, I mean, right before this, he had done Lethal Weapon 2, which Leo gets.
Phenomenal.
Which, yeah, and you can't get further from Leo Getz than Tommy DeVito.
Yeah.
You just can't, even in his other stuff like Nicky and Easy Money, there's a hint of
A
Tommy
little bit, yeah.
in there, and even in Harry Lime, the criminal aspect, there's a little bit of Harry and Tommy, but to go from Leo Getz to Tommy DeVito,
Yeah. And then, he's got Vincent LaGuardia Gambini, that's a whole other level
yeah,
of comedy. He's
yeah.
really fantastic. I don't know if you've seen The Irishman, but his performance
He's the only reason I watched that
he's
movie, and
brilliant.
he's the only reason to watch that movie, honestly, in my
He's
opinion. I
brilliant.
mean, I was so happy that he came back and that he did that, and I missed him so
Yeah, well, I
much.
think, the problem is people always after Casino, which I personally love that movie. I know a lot of people say it's like, the weaker Goodfellas or whatever. I love Casino. I watch Casino any day of the week. But after Nicky Santoro, where he's like Tommy DeVito on crack.
On
Yeah, and
steroids.
it's like, and then
Yeah.
it's like, okay, he plays this really subtle, quiet gangster in The Irishman, but still just as scary and just as effective. And I'm so glad he came back and showed that he can do both. That's top-notch stuff right there.
I just remember the comedian George Carlin saying, he doesn't pray to God, he prays to Joe Pesci. Because he looks like he can get results.
Yeah, what a talent.
But I think Ray Liotta, of course, he's fantastic. And of course, he's the narrator. He's the protagonist. He's our buddy. I mean, he's doing a great job. But I really feel like Lorraine Bracco is the other standout performance in this film. As Karen Hill, she is just holding her own among this cast and really just making a dynamic character with a very interesting arc, because she is not a part of this world. And she also shows the corruption of the romance, of the lifestyle.
I was just going to say that, she could have been easily a character that they chose to sweep under the rug. She's the wife, but they did something with it. And she's phenomenal in this movie. And I think, her narration, for my money, adds to, like we said, the romanticism. Like Henry gets swept up by seeing the guys in the neighborhood have that life. And then he becomes one of those guys. And then she's not that type of person. But then she gets swept up. Like, like most of my girlfriends, if their boyfriend handed them a gun, would have called the cops. But it turned me on. It's like she just got all, pulled into that world also. And then it leads to her downfall too.
Anne.
Yes.
If one of your boyfriends pistol whipped a guy who assaulted you, would you call the cops or would you help him out?
I won't call the cops. I think it's quite sexy.
Got it, girl. Yeah, because you never rat on your friends.
Always keep your mouth shut.
And you keep your mouth shut.
That's it. I love. That's one of my favorite scenes in the film is when Henry takes that measured walk across the street. All you hear is the sound of those heels on his shoes, and he just gives the guy 11 shots with the gun.
The thing I love about it is that it's one shot, one take, 45 seconds, no cuts. You just you follow him there, you see what he does, and you follow him back. It's just a very, very nice camera setup and a very, very exceptional performance on him because you can see it before it happens, and then the guy's arrogance,
What do you want?
You want some too fucked? And it's just like he just puts him
What
down.
makes me laugh in that scene is after he hits the guy for the 11th time, the other guy goes, "Don't shoot." I lose it every time.
Yeah, I love that scene too. And what I love the most is the face of Ray Liotta. It can be an angel face, and in the blink of an eye, he turns into a implacable man. It's really convincing. Lorraine Bracco also, she's just an angel sometimes, and she can be really pissed off when he betrayed her. And you feel like she's I don't know if you say that, but in French we say injured wolf. When you feel intensively something and someone hurts you and you want to get kind of a revenge, but you don't want to hurt that person because you love this person anyway. So we said that injured wolf. I feel she was like that.
I think another good thing about this film is the supporting cast. There's a lot of people who turn up in this film and just kind of add to the richness. Samuel L. Jackson is in there. Michael Imperioli is in there. Frank Vincent is in there, and he's just a fantastic character actor. Michael Starr and Beau
Mm-hmm.
Starr,
Mm-hmm.
you know, as Henry's father and as Frenchie, you know, like these just great character actors just again elevate the story, elevate the setting and the, you know, the ambiance of the film. I love when they're going through, again tying back to the disposable nature of the lifestyle, when they're going through the club in the beginning and Henry's just rattling off all these characters that you only really see in this like 1 30-second bit. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there was Frankie the Wop and Nicky Eyes and Jimmy Two Times and da la la and Pete the Killer. By the way, I took care of that thing for you. You know, like just all of these people that you see them in the background a little bit here and there, but they're never mentioned, they're never referred to, they're never interacted with ever
Mm-hmm.
again. And I think that also just adds to that disposable nature of the lifestyle that I was talking about, where it's like people come, people go, everybody has their own thing going on, but you won't be missed later on. You're there for what you need to be there for.
Yeah, pretty much.
Talking about supporting characters, one of my favorite, I don't know if you really say that it's an important character, but for me it is. It's Tommy's mother. I love that character. She seems so naive, but I'm quite sure she knows some some stuff going on. But she's so cute when they arrive in the middle of the night. And I didn't know who was the actress, but actually it's Martin Scorsese's mother. Which is crazy when you think about it, but she's so cute. And yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
love the scene at the dinner. As we said, it's a fantastic scene, and yeah, it's one of my favorite supporting character for sure.
Did you see the painting that she made? I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. One dog looks one way, one dog looks the
The
other
guy's
way.
like, "What do you want from me?" Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she pops up in some of his films. She's in Casino also. She has another small part in that.
The funny thing about that scene though is you know, the direction that he gave his mother was just like, yeah, just have dinner with our friends, you know. We're just having some friends over for dinner and just, you know.
She didn't have lines.
I don't think she had scripted
Oh
lines. You know,
wow.
she's not really an actress, but she knows Joe Pesci, she knows Robert De Niro, and she knew Ray Liotta from working on the film. So it's like, oh, yeah, just have, you know, they're just friends coming over for dinner and just get them a meal. And then she just sat down and like kind of not improv, but sort of improv that scene, I
I
believe.
heard she cooked
Wow.
for them a lot on the set. Like, so could you imagine?
Crazy.
My mom is
Yeah,
craft
yeah.
services, you know, she's meatball parm,
Why
you
don't you
know.
get a nice
I'll
girl and
take it.
settle down?
I heard that the FBI agent at the end of the movie is also playing his role.
That was the real guy that busted Henry, the real Henry Hill. Yeah, the FBI agent at the end was the real FBI agent.
Oh, the guy sitting down with him talking about his options?
Yeah, that was the real guy that busted Henry Hill and cut him the deal. So talk about method
Yeah, right.
acting.
For sure, these elements help to have realism, but also the sequence shots. I don't know if we talked about that already, but the sequence shots all along the movie. I guess it was super hard to make them, especially the one when they enter the Copacabana. They start from the streets and they go from corridor to corridor until they go through the kitchen and then they enter the main room. It's super impressive when you think about it. I guess it was just I mean, maybe not one take, but it's a sequence shot, so it's quite long, and you really feel like you're following them. You're following Karen and Henry entering the Copacabana. And when you think about how many extras were there, I guess it was so complicated to have everybody at the right place at the right moment. You even have people passing in front of the camera. It makes so real. It's what we said at the beginning. It's the realism of this movie is crazy.
I think it's just over 3 minutes, that shot. It's like
Wow.
3.5 minutes, and I believe they got it in about 8 takes.
Wow. Wow.
And it is one unbroken shot. And really, that's the longest shot in the movie. I think the second longest is the one when he pistol whips the neighbor across the street. I mean, really, every other shot in this movie is like super tight and very, very quick. But that one is kind of significant, and it stands out because that's really when Karen is getting swept off her feet. And so they're taking a moment to just really put you in her shoes as Henry like razzle dazzles her in this moment of their courtship. And really, if you watch it, it seems like they're going through this elaborate, backroom labyrinth maze, but really they're just taking a little detour around the kitchen to check out the line. I mean, really, it's just a big circle that they're walking around, but because the way the kitchen is broken up, it seems like it's another set of corridors, and really it's just a roundabout in the kitchen that they walk through, because the door that they walk into the kitchen is the door they walk out of to the kitchen.
Yeah. One thing I'll say about for the pistol whip scene again is the fact that it's done in one take, but then you've got the practical blood effect in that shot too, and that it lands. And you know how you've worked with blood, Pete, that's a pain in the ass. So the fact that actually went off correctly and they got the shot and everybody did what they were supposed to do and there's no mistakes. I mean, Jesus. For the record, I have my Blue Heaven. I love my Blue Heaven. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, geez, I love that movie. And those two guys, man, two of my favorite guys on the planet.
But really, yeah, when you think about it and then you watch it, it's like, that's even funnier now. Because honestly, Henry Hill, he got kicked out of the witness protection program because he kept running his mouth and like blowing his cover, and they moved him around to a number. He was in Nebraska. I think he ran like a steakhouse in like North Platte. He was in Seattle for a while, and he would just, after a few drinks of hanging out with his new neighbors, he would just start running his mouth. And then eventually they kicked him out of the witness protection program. Like before the movie came out, even he was gone. But by that point, I think he was just such a high profile that if anything did happen to him, it would have been bad for those involved.
He got sick of the egg noodles and ketchup, I guess. He wanted to go back.
Yeah, I wanted to say it's even a better movie than what you can have right now in theaters sometimes. But what I would say about this movie, it's a cinema experience. Definitely, it's something that everybody should see at least once, as I said. And what I will keep in mind is the direction. Really, I was blown away by the direction, the angles, the camera angles you have, because I'm not sure we talked enough about it, because really you have so many things to say about that. You have, especially when you think that there was no drone at that time, and sometimes you have some camera move, you feel like it's done with a drone, but at that time they had no drone. So really, it's really impressive. And there is a scene, really, I'm really impressed by this scene. It's, when they open the refrigerated truck, you are at the top of the truck and they enter out. It's crazy. That scene is crazy when you think about it. I don't know how they did that, but yeah, it's something I will remember about this movie is the direction is really amazing.
His skill as a filmmaker and as a storyteller, and knowing when to apply what technique to get the effect that he wants on the audience is really spectacular. And I believe Goodfellas is, just him firing on all cylinders. And for me, it's the top of his filmography.
I can't argue that. I've seen almost all of his films. I haven't seen Last Temptation and Kundun. I think of maybe the only two I haven't seen. I own a lot of them. Oh, Age of Innocence. There's three of them. Those are the three I haven't seen. I own a lot of his films. I would recommend, of course, Raging Bull. I personally love Mean Streets, because there was like an unofficial gangster trilogy for him. It was Mean Streets, Goodfellas, and Casino, and now I guess you could call it a foursome if you add The Irishman to it. But those are great films. Taxi Driver.
I always like After Hours. That movie perfectly illustrates all of my apprehension with New York City. No offense, but I've always kind of liked The Aviator.
Is great.
And
Gangs of New York,
The Departed, and of course, this is an underrated Scorsese in my opinion, and you may really like this one, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore.
Okay.
Starring Ellen Burstyn and Chris Christopherson. It is very off his beaten path, but it's still a very excellent film with a very strong female protagonist, and the result is pretty exceptional.
You know what I really enjoyed, and I didn't know anything about the movie. I saw it in the theater. But I saw it was Martin Scorsese. I'm like, I'm in. I'll go. And the last waltz, a documentary movie about the band, really enjoyed that movie. It was I knew nothing of the band. I knew nothing, but I was like, it's Scorsese. I'll go see it. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I mean, I recommend all of his stuff. I can't say that I've seen one movie and like, oh, well, that was fucking terrible.
That will about do it for us here today at the Visually Hidden Selects podcast. We will be discussing a completely different film next time, so be sure to head over to the YouTube channel and subscribe so you don't miss any future recommendations. You can catch Steven Bendler on Instagram over at Steve's Pop Culture Corner. Ann and I are also on Instagram as well as Letterboxd, so you can follow us over there and see what we watched and what we think of it. And until next time, never rat on your friends and always keep your mouth shut.